ask everyone to raise their hand if you've ever witnessed road rage. I see a show of hands. Okay, I see a show of hands. Thank you. Perhaps, and I don't need to show hands on this, perhaps you've experienced some road rage inside your own automobile. Would that be safe to say? Let's see what happens. What causes road rage? You're coming from Dallas, coming south on 35. There's sections of that that's 75 miles an hour, and you're doing 75 miles an hour. Now, what George Carlin said, the comedian, is that people who are going slower than us on the freeway are idiots. And people who are going faster than us are maniacs. Can you relate to that? Okay, so that starts a whole scenario. So what happens is, we're going 75, we're in the middle lane, 3 lanes, and this guy, one guy passes us on the left, cuts in front of us, goes over this other lane, and boys, we get startled. What happens is, we see or hear something, and then we tell ourselves a story. What story might we tell ourselves about that incident? Might we say, this is the interactive part. Might we say, gosh, he's in a hurry. I hope everything's okay.
No.
Okay. Let's try again.
Down.
What else?
He needs to slow his.
Please don't kill
himself down.
We might say, gosh, he's a reckless driver. Okay. Or we might say, he's trying to kill me. Okay. Now, what happens if we think someone's trying to kill us?
Get upset.
We get defensive.
We're going to get upset. Okay. So what happens is we see or hear something, we tell ourselves a story, then our emotions get involved, and then we act accordingly. So if we tell the story, he's trying to kill me. Okay. He wasn't trying to kill us, but we tell ourselves that story. Okay. We might speed up and try to tailgate him. We might try to cut him off. We might teach him how to drive with sign language. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we might do, okay? So can you see how important the story is? Okay, a franchisee calls and wants to bring something to your attention. What might you call that? What would be another word for bringing something to your, what's that?
A concern, an issue.
Oh, that's a C word. What's the other C word?
Complaint.
Complaint. Thank you, okay? Yeah, my car was making a noise out of the right front wheel. And I took it to the place that I've been taking the same garage for 16 years, getting any repairs done on family vehicles, including my sons, my daughters, my wife's. So we spent a lot of money there. I took it in and said, it's making a noise in the right front wheel. And my wife picked me up and we went back home. A little bit later, I get a call. And the technician said, or the service advisor said, Mr. Houze, you complained about a noise in your right front wheel. Now, do I look like that kind of guy that would complain? I mean, I'm a pretty nice guy, right? I mean, you don't know me that well, but trust me. Somebody help me out here.
You're
I'm a nice guy. I would never complain. Why did he say I complain? So he triggered me. No, I didn't do anything stupid. But, I thought, I don't complain. I brought that to his attention. He could have said, the noise you heard was. There's lots of things he could have said without accusing me of complaint. So now, the franchisee calls and brings something to your attention about marketing, about IT, about what would be the other accounting, what would be the other departments.
That's process.
Yeah, customer service. What's that?
Neighborly.
Yeah. So they're going to call you about something and bring it to your attention. Now, what story do you tell yourself? Then what story do you tell yourself? Oh boy, here's a chance to practice my problem-solving skills. Would that be a story you tell yourself? Oh boy, here's a chance for me to help this person out. They have a problem. I'm the person, they've called the right person. I can help them out. Or might we say, oh, here he goes again, or here she goes again, complaining. Well, they're from New York. No wonder. Them Yankees, blah, blah, blah. You see how the story affects that? So we could go on and on. Same thing with children, same thing with spouses, same thing with friends, and what have you. The stories we tell ourselves trigger our emotions, and we act accordingly. If the story triggers positive emotions, we're going to take positive action. If the story triggers negative emotions, it's going to trigger negative actions. And that's where we get into trouble. So we keep in mind the triggering part. Now, we're going to spend a little time, and then we're going to get to the drama triangle. Where do these stories come from? What's that?
Ourselves.
Ourselves. No, they come from in here. Trust me. They come from between our ears, no doubt about it. But parents, past conditioning, all sorts of things have affected how our stories get developed. Now, the drama triangle was only developed in 1961 by a guy by the name of Hartman, a psychologist. He took it based on some work by Eric Berne and Tom Harris on transactional analysis. That's where it came from. And Eric Berne came up with transactional analysis and talked about the games people play. And the reason that we play games is because we can show our aggression, we can show our emotion without being direct about it, okay? That has some advantages, more disadvantages than advantages. And then what Tom Harris did is it took it to the next level, and he came up with a book. He wrote a book called, you've probably heard the title, probably haven't read it because it's an old book, but I'm okay, you're okay. And he talks about the 4 life positions that we have. I'm okay, you're okay. That's a healthy, good position. You take that with your loved ones, you take that with your children, you take that with coworkers, you take that with our franchisees, what have you. I'm okay, you're okay. That's the adult position, that's a good position. But a lot of people are scripted to think, I'm okay, you're not okay. It's the holier than thou type of thing. It's the righteous indignation. I'm better than you type of a thing. Yeah, the opposite of that is I'm not okay, you're okay. I'm a victim. I get, people dump on me, what have you, okay? And then then the really extreme one is I'm not okay, you're not okay. That's as negative as you can get. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that, but you do have a handout. On pages 2 and 3, and maybe part of 4, I don't remember. Just pages 2 and 3. I'm not going to read this. You can read this at your own leisure. I'm just going to give you an overview. And basically what they did with the transaction analysis says that we have 3 people inside of us. We have a parent, we have an adult, and we have a child. And they are talking to us all the time. Everything we do gets filtered through one of those 3 areas. And the parent actually is 2 kinds. The handout says controlling. I prefer the word critical. There are critical parents and there are nurturing parents. The critical parents are the ones you always, you never, finger pointing, blaming, disciplining, what have you. Discipline is not always negative. Then the nurturing parents, the hugging, it's okay, why are they picking on you, blah, blah, blah. Now, they originally did it with literally parents and children, but it applies to us adults, okay? We have this adult, parent, and child in our head. So you have the controlling or critical parent, you have the nurturing parent. Let's drop down, you have the adult, which we'll come to in a minute. Then you have really 3 types of children. The 2 major are the adaptive child that responds to whatever the critical parent says. We become an adaptive child as a natural style when we've had a disciplinarian father or mother, perhaps. Without getting too psychological. And then you have the natural child or the free spirit type of thing, just wants to have fun. The classic kid profile. Then you have a little professor who's always trying to figure things out. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this model, but the idea is what happens is if I come at you in a parent role, you're going to do 1 or 2 things. You're either going to 1 or 2 or 3 things. You're going to get defensive and out-parent me. We're going to have our parents going after each other, being critical of each other, or have a love fest and talk about how great things are. Or we'll start talking about the children or whatever, or you'll hook my child, either my adaptive child or my natural child, and we're just going to be getting in a circle and playing games, okay? The only healthy position is adult to adult, okay? If I start off as a child, I may hook your parent. Can you see that? Is that enough of a framework for us to go to the next step? So what happens? We have this parent, adult, and child in our head talking to us all the time. If we come from the parent or the child, we might hook the opposite in a conversation. So if a franchisee calls you and comes at you from a parental point of view, it is real easy for you to get triggered by your child. Okay, either adapt, which might be a good position from a customer service perspective, or you may lash out, what have you, or you may come at them from your parent and you can't talk to me like that, or what did you do wrong, or we become accusatory, we become the critical parent. So we got to be careful. So one of the things that affects our story is the parent, adult, and child. Okay, so that's explained on pages 2 and 3. And one other thing, to just touch on Eric Burns, and I took this from his book. Here are some of the games, and he had a whole list of probably 20 or 30. I might just pick out 8 or 10 over here. See what you made me do? Okay. Where's that coming from? Which parent all the time? Child, yeah, thank you. Okay, why don't you, yes, but, and, you know, that's a parental type of thing. Ain't it awful? Why does everything always happen to me? You got me into this. Look how hard I've tried. I'm only trying to help. Let you and him fight. Now I've got you, you jerk. It's all your fault. See what you made me do. So we get into those kind of games and they're unproductive and unhealthy. So those are the things, the games and the way we're talking to ourselves, parent, adult, child, affects the story, and that puts us into the drama triangle. Folks on screen, Joel, can you see the drama triangle?
Can we focus in closer on that?
That's as close as
I can bring the camera down here.
Okay. Basically, it's a triangle. It's a big triangle. In the upper left-hand corner says persecutor. Upper right-hand corner says rescuer. The bottom it says victim.
And it is on page 4 of the handout.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. That's on page 4 of the handout. I'm going to give you the kind of an overview first, then we'll go to the handout. Okay? And it has drama in the middle. And when you think of drama, what do you think of? Negative, chaos, upset feelings, broken relationships, all sorts of negative things can happen from the drama. Now, what Dr. Cartman said, is that if we enter, no matter where we enter the drama triangle on any one of those 3 positions, if we stay in it long enough, we're going to end up being the victim. And so it's really about victimhood here. And so what we do is we tell us this story about how we're the victim, our emotions kick in, react accordingly, and that's not healthy. So now, you know, some people enter the triangle from the persecutor, trying to find blame, finger pointing, what have you. Some come in as a rescuer, and let me clarify on the rescuer. The rescuer is not a first responder. It's not the EMT, it's not the fireman, the policeman, the doctor, the nurse. This rescuer is someone who wants to make you dependent. They want to feel important, okay? They're going to rescue you. They're going to try to help you, even if you don't want their help, okay? And then of course, the victim is, and this, Cartman put the persecutor and rescuer on top on purpose, okay? Because they tend to look down on the victim, okay? The victim tends to look to these folks as being the oppressors, okay? So now, questions on just the setup here? Okay, now go to page 4. And you look at we'll start with the persecutor first. You've got a bunch of red type there. I'm just going to extemporize here. The persecutor is classically the bully type. Okay, when you think of a persecutor, you think of a bully. You know, they feel, you know, it makes them feel powerful to be a persecutor. You know, they keep the victim suppressed. You know, they'll say things like, "What were you thinking?" Okay, or "How could you?" You know, they blame others, they criticize, they're dominating, they're angry, they're resentful, they have righteous indignation, easy for me to say. They keep victims down. You know, they're the critical parent, using the parent, adult, child. So that's the persecutor. Yeah, that's the persecutor. Okay. Questions on the persecutor? Can you think of times when you've been in that role? You know, chances are we've been in there, all there from time to time. Some of us maybe more than others. Perhaps you have someone in your life that comes from that dominant position. Then the rescuer, typically, you know, that's a person who feels righteous and, you know, they want to save people. What happens is the rescuer almost always becomes a victim real quick. Okay, and here's how that happens. You know, they have a need to feel they have a strong need to fix problems. Their fears is to not be needed, so they like to be needed. They like to volunteer advice in addictive behavior circles. They are called the enablers. They're the enablers that keep the victim in the victim role, even though they proclaim to be saving the victim. Okay? Can you think of times maybe when you've been in the rescuer role and or what have you? Okay, let's just stay there before we go to the victim role. So franchisee calls, bringing something to your attention. You could tell them that they didn't read the manual. You could tell them they haven't attended training. There's all sorts of things that you could do to criticize them. probably not going to be very productive. You could try to rescue them by taking their side, okay, and saying, oh yeah, those folks in IT are, you know, whatever, pick a name, or marketing, or accounting, or some other department, where you're pitting one against the other. So you're rescuing the victim from those mean people over there, where whatever caused the problem. So, but again, that's not productive. Now the victim, that's the poor me. That's the poor me role. Why is this always happening to me? They feel hopeless. They feel trapped. They feel guilty. They feel powerless. And so what will happen is that whatever the stimulus is, the rescuer comes in and tries to rescue, the persecutor chances are persecuting, okay, and it just becomes vicious. Now, typically, these folks don't interact because they're teaming up against this person. They're competitors. They're competing. They're competing for power. They're competing for recognition or feeling needed, okay? Now, let me just give you a simple little example. And Todd, will you be my boss for the next 5 minutes?
Sure.
Maybe 10 at the most.
No problem.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay. Let's say that I work for Todd, and I'm a salesman. And yesterday morning, I made the biggest sale in the history of the company. No one had ever done anything close to that. And Todd says, let's go out and celebrate. So we go out and celebrate. And unfortunately, I had too much to drink. I celebrated too much. Todd recognizes that, takes my keys away from me, insists on driving me home. So far, so good, right? We get to the house. 2 a.m. Joyce meets us at the front door. And she flings open the front door and says, where have you been? How come you didn't call me? Are you drunk again? Okay, and we could go on and on and on. Which position is Joyce in? Joyce, by the way, is my wife of 52 years, okay? Which position is Joyce? Persecutor. Which position is Rex? Victim, right? Okay. Todd says, oh, Joyce, well, I've already given it away here, but you would have figured it out anyway. Oh, Joyce, ease up, chill. Rex just made the biggest sale in the history of the company. You're going to have lots of money. Everything's going to be good. We just celebrate a little too much. Who's he? He's the rescuer, right? And Joyce says to Todd, you keep out of this, you jerk. If it hadn't been for blah, 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 now she's the persecutor, now Todd's the victim. And I say, you can't talk to my boss that way. I'm now the persecutor, Joyce is the victim. Okay, I'm trying to rescue Todd. You see where this is going? Nowhere good, all right? Okay, you just keep going around this thing, and then, I could exaggerate for effect here, but, Joyce is going to end up being a victim. I'm going to be a victim. Todd's going to end up being a victim. And when we stay on that triangle, that's what happens. Now, forget the part about me getting drunk, but what was the fact that I was drunk? What was Todd's responsibility? He took the keys away from me, so now let me drive drunk. Friends don't let friends drive drunk. He got me home safely. Was his job as marriage counselor? No. Okay, his job was to get me home safely, see me to the front door. Joyce is there. I may or may not get in the house, okay? But he did his job. So what happens is, what we want to do is, as Steve mentioned, we not only want to avoid getting on it if we can. We'll talk about techniques to do that. But once we're on it and recognize it, we need to get off it as soon as possible. So the fourth position is off the triangle. And it's down here. And it says responsible. So in a classic sense, thank you, Todd, for being my boss. On any scenario, forget the celebrating scenario, but anytime we're on a drawable triangle, what questions can we ask ourselves to be responsible? Just give me some examples. Anybody, we can hear from the remote folks as well.
Should we be involved?
Should
I would ask myself.
Okay, should we be involved? Okay, let's reframe that maybe. It's a great question. Let's just reframe it as, what's my responsibility here? Okay, what's my degree of involvement? How can I help? Now, you got to be careful that you're not doing it from a selfish reason. You're doing it for the other person's reason. Yeah, I think some of this is in your notes. No, it isn't in your notes. But what can I, okay, what's my responsibility? What can I learn from this? What would I do different next time? A bunch of what questions. What are the facts? What's the truth as I know it? Okay. What's the possible perception here? What would be some other examples? What's my goal? Okay. What's my goal? And that's, Todd's goal in that example is to get me home safe. Okay. So can you see how asking yourselves those questions, what's happening is you're reframing this story. Okay. That what happens is when you're in a first gear role, you're telling yourself a story about what that person is doing wrong. If you're in the rescuer mode, your motives are wrong. If you're in the victim role, you're feeling helpless and you're not accepting responsibility. So what's my responsibility in this situation? What are the facts? What are the data? It could be. Now this is the neighborly water group, air serve. You have something classic to help you with this responsibility part. What do you think it is?
Code of values.
Absolutely, code of values. You just take a look. I don't know how many there are. 15? 13. Those are 13 power statements that any one of those could apply anytime you're on a drama triangle. Because what happens with the story? What do we tell ourselves? Let me go on over this. That, do all of you consider yourself a charming person? I mean, charming. Being charming is good, right?
Yes.
This means
Yes, it is.
This means yeah. So charming is good. And chances are that people, there are a lot of charming people in your life who are charming for different reasons and what have you. But charming is good. Well, in a book called The Trust Edge, the company that wrote the book, the author who wrote that book, did a study about charming people. And the number one characteristic of a charming person is that they're grateful. The number one distracting thing that causes someone to not be charming is that they, number one is they complain, and number two is they gossip. Okay, so when it comes down to two things that cause the games that people play and cause the drama triangle are really complaining and gossiping. And you cover that in your code of values. So what happens is when someone is gossiping or someone is complaining about something, we tend to tell a story and we get sucked into the drama triangle real quick. So what are our solutions? So a franchisee is complaining about something. Okay, how do we keep from getting sucked into the drama triangle?
Well, you mentioned a couple of them. So what are the facts?
Okay, all right.
So let's rewind and talk
what
about
happened?
How did you get here? What happened?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Who was involved?
Yep.
What, so you got to dig in.
What would you like to have had happen?
What would you like to have happen? What were you trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
What happened before?
Yeah.
Basically, let's clarify the facts and let's get specifics of the story. What actually happened?
Yeah.
That's a good way to start.
Okay, good. Yeah, good. Other thoughts? Folks who are joining us remote, have thoughts on it? Can we hear them? Are they muted?
No, they're not muted. They've muted themselves, but they can unmute and interact.
Okay. Okay. What are some other scenarios that might cause you to get sucked into the drama triangle? I mean, not limited to franchisees calling and complaining. Something at training school, something in our office, something other departments. What? Okay.
Well, I'll give you an example of something uncustomer related.
Okay.
But work related are things like, which are 100 years old, performance reviews.
Okay.
You can get sucked into a triangle.
Sure. Okay.
That's just one example.
Yeah. What would be a way to keep from getting sucked into the drama triangle around performance reviews? And anybody, those who receive them, those who give them.
like somebody else's performance review?
No, I'm just saying what happens, if I'm catching it right, you're sitting down with somebody and you're talking to them about what they did well, what they could do better.
I mean, that was just one example of if you think about it over the years, if you're giving a performance review, if you're in that role,
right.
Most people, that is a very stressful, they come into that time of that period of time, there's a lot of drama going on in their head because of the story they're telling themselves.
Yeah. Okay.
So one example.
Yeah, good example, thank you. Anytime that we have a critical conversation with somebody, whether it's one-on-one or in a group, whatever, you're discussing a difficult subject, is one of the things you want to do is to help, because each one of these people have different needs. These folks have a need for power. These folks have a need to feel important, and these folks have a need to be paid, whatever. So what we want to do is we want them to feel safe. So whether it's a performance review or a disciplinary action, a promotion, a change in the organizational change, what have you, what we want to do is how can I help this person feel safe? So you frame it. And so you know they're going to have a story in their head, so you plant the story in their head by giving them the story. Here's what I want to accomplish today. Here's my goal. What are your goals for this discussion? And that type of thing. So what you want to do is you want to help people with their story. And that's tying these two together has been the most helpful to me. I had a similar experience to Steve. Farrell Hunter was a mentor of mine, starting in 1972. And so that's a long time ago. And I had the same reaction to the drama triangle. And I've used it with my children and in lots of different situations. But again, just as Steve talked about it a couple of weeks ago, I get sucked into this on a regular basis. I mean, I got sucked into it on a small way, and the guy said that I complained about the noise. Okay, so we got to be careful we don't get triggers. All right. So, how do we stay out of victimhood? I've got some things here I want to cover. Oh, a lot of times what will happen is one of my hobbies years ago, I know you're going to say get a life, was to collect lyrics and titles of country and western songs, of country songs mainly. But here's some of them. Here's a quarter called Someone Who Cares. Okay. I'm just a bug on the windshield of life. She got the gold mine, I got the shaft. You done tore out my heart and stumped that sucker flat. Okay. Chances are none of you have ever heard any of those songs, but those you have heard some of them. Okay, those are real songs. Okay.
Rex, I've got a trivia question for you.
Yeah.
What's the longest title of a country song?
Oh, I don't know, but you must know.
I do.
Okay, what is it?
I've got tears in my ears from lying in my bed with my head on my pillow crying like a willow over you.
That's the entire title. That's one I collected. I thought that I got tears in my ears.
Yeah. Well,
from crying over
I heard that on the radio one time. So
it makes sense. Yeah, I got tears in my ears from crying over you. That's right. Okay, now here are some myths that create the drama triangle. Okay, the stronger always dominates the weaker. Have you heard that or thought that, or people that believe that? Okay, that's not true. That's a myth. The stronger don't necessarily always dominate the weaker. So what we need to do is we need to demonstrate our rights. Okay, victims will say things like, "I end up losing whenever I have a conflict." That we think we're not good at handling conflict situations. People always take advantage of me. Another victim role. I believe there isn't enough of what I need available. Not enough time, not enough money, not enough resources. That's a myth. I can't be direct about how I think and feel. Do you like it when people are direct with you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, wouldn't you rather have what the person's really thinking and feeling? I mean, obviously need to be tactful about that, but too many times we'll beat around the bush, and that gets us onto the drama triangle. If there's a winner, there's got to be a loser. And we can have win-win relationships. Every relationship really needs to be a win-win. Okay. All right. Let's do a little quiz time, feedback time. Tell me what some of the characteristics of the victim would be. How can you tell when you or someone else is in the victim role? What would be the words they say? What would their body language look like? Give me some feedback. Let me know how I did in explaining what a victim looks like.
I can't believe.
What's that?
I can't believe. I can't
Yeah.
believe so-and-so did that. I can't believe so-and-so said that.
Yeah, any sentence that starts with "I can't believe" is probably a victim sentence coming out. What else?
They take or we or whoever takes a situation and turns it personal, right, and not to facts or data.
Right. Okay. Good. What else? Okay. Sounds like I need to do a little more teaching here. But anything that would indicate that they feel victimized or oppressed or helpless or hopeless or powerless or ashamed. Body language is a classic example. You know, people that, you know, if they're normally like this and they come to you like that, the chances are they're feeling oppressed about something. So body language, it could be something like that. They go to someone that they want to be a rescuer. They want to be rescued. Marla, what do you think about this? What do you think I should do? Okay. What's a good reaction when someone comes to you? A coworker, doesn't have to be a boss relationship. When a coworker comes to you and say, you know, what should I do? Yeah. Actually, can you think of something for Billy?
Well, typically you would, I mean, I don't know, this is probably not the correct thing now that I'm listening to all of this, but you would probably want to help them as the rescuer. If you were the rescuer, you would want to offer advice, or you'd want to help, or you would want to try to correct the situation, or
You recognize that very well.
Yeah.
What would be a better way of doing it? Not limited to Julie, but what would be, in that scenario, what would be a better way of doing it? So I come to you and say, you know, I've got this problem. What do you think I should do?
Well, right now, I think I would say that that's not my responsibility. But I wouldn't say that to them directly so boldly, but
that's good.
But it would not be my responsibility.
What's a better way of saying it?
I'm not really sure how. It would depend on the scenario, really.
Yeah, this is hypothetical, but let me just offer a few ideas here. Say, well, what's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? What have you done already to solve it? What would you like to have happen? You don't have to give someone advice. When someone comes to you advice, the best thing, you know, have you talked to so-and-so about that? Okay. So you can, by asking questions is a great way to stay out of the drama triangle. And it's real easy to get sucked in. You hear that noise. Okay, that's you getting sucked into the drama triangle. I've got this problem. Would you help me? Well, sure you want to help. You want to be a good citizen. You want to be a good teammate. You want to help. But the best way you can help someone is to show them how to come up with personal responsibility. That's the bottom line. The bottom line of the whole thing is that when we learn how to accept personal responsibility for who we are, what we are, and for our situation, would you agree that it's not our situation that counts, it's how we react to our situation? So when we have teaching moments all the time. You have teaching moments with your children. You have teaching moments with a spouse or a loved one. You have a parent. You can have teaching moments all the time. And one of the greatest things that we as human beings can do for our fellow human beings is to teach them how to accept personal responsibility. And I'm not that old guy that says, get off my grass, kids, okay? But I think we've slipped some. I think this is one thing where we have slipped some on personal responsibility. I don't know what caused it. But I think we need to turn that cycle around. And you wouldn't be in this room, chances are, if you didn't accept a high degree of personal responsibility. But what we need to do is, if there are folks in our lives who aren't accepting personal responsibility, we're not going to get them to accept personal responsibility by persecuting you. You need to be more responsible. Okay? We're not going to do it by rescuing them. Oh, here's a solution. Here's what I would do. Okay? That's not going to get it done. And we're not going to do it by being the victim. Okay? So what we need to do is teach people how to accept personal responsibility, to be personally responsible for their situation. You think about, I had a little buffer time in here for real life examples. I was hoping that some of you could come up with some real life examples for me. Do you think of other situations? It can be a hypothetical, but other situations that are working
about the triangle?
Yeah, about how we get sucked into the drama triangle.
Well, one thing I was going to say on your previous page, you know, where you had it makes me realize that you insert a story if there's space to insert a story. You know, so in Ron's, the example Ron gave about the
Performance
review, if you sat down with somebody and said, hey, I just want you to know the reason we do this is I want to help you be better. You're a great employee. I think you've got talent. Here's where I see, you know, then you're helping somebody that may have, their story may be typically negative related to correction, and you're reframing that. And we talked about the neighborly thing earlier, the van wrap thing that he was talking about. And that, to me, when I first saw that video, I thought, I think there's a little bit of a hole in the story there where that could potentially lead to some issues where we could have said, look, we're testing this because our only goal is we want to drive more revenue to you as a franchisee. We want you to see we're always working to make things more successful, et cetera. But if you leave that out, then it's when I first saw the wrap, my thought was, yeah, we're going to go to, everything's going to be neighborly, all the brands are going to be gone. But some of that is because there's, at least for me, there was some hole in that story. So it makes me realize how the importance of when we communicate something, we can save people a lot of time, emotional energy by doing a good job of communicating from the front, because we make it less, we create less possibility for people to insert a story, you know. Right. So it makes me realize the communication on the front end is really important, because it can save people a lot of time and emotions and action.
Excellent, thank you. Would everyone agree that if we don't create the story and set the scene and frame it properly, they're going to come up with their own story, and chances are their story is not going to be rosy and clean and positive and forward thinking. That particularly those who come from the victim mentality, they'll think the worst. You know, why is this happening? You know, why is this happening to me? You know, here they go again. I mean, there's all sorts of phrases that you can tell where they're coming from, and there's more victim phrases than anything else. Okay, good example. Thank you, Noel.
I have a question.
Sure.
So what if at times you start with like the responsible part of it? You start there, and then you have tried that role probably like 4 or 5 times, and then you become the persecutor, the rescuer, victim, because you're like kind of crying. Or do you get where I'm going with this? Like, you started at the started responsible, asked what you could do different next time, what's the truth, what's your goal in this, but it's not getting anything accomplished, and then you kind of get put in the victim role, the rescuer role, or the prosecutor role.
And who exactly put you in that role?
I'm just saying scenarios. Like, say you went to an employer, like, hey, what can I do next? I'm trying to make this better.
So then that person doesn't provide the solution.
Coaching, yeah.
And the person that you're seeking coaching from doesn't provide solutions. Yeah. Doesn't provide.
Here's a thought.
Okay.
Number one, I can't remember the exact phrase here. It had nothing to do with my session. This was a remote phrase that will pop into my head soon here. We don't have to participate in every fight. That's not the right one. You know, so if someone wants to fight with us, we don't have to participate. Okay, we can choose to. So choices are big. Our greatest power is our power to choose. Okay, so in that scenario, so you present to me, I have this problem, and you ask me good questions, what have you. I don't buy any of them. I don't look like I'm going to take action. Here's what I'd recommend you say to me. Rex, it doesn't sound like you really want to fix this, do you? So you know, sometimes you have to be directed. Okay, again, part of the whole thing about games and the things we've been talking about here in the drama triangle are to keep from avoiding from being direct.
Yeah.
And so I think if someone isn't responding to your questions, isn't giving you possible solutions, you might say, now that was probably maybe too much for direct for some people, but just say, doesn't sound like you want to solve this problem. Doesn't sound like to me that you want to solve this problem. That's an approach. A softer approach might be, why don't you, sounds like we've talked about a lot of good things here. Why don't you go think about it and perhaps, get back to me on what your solution might be. Would you think that might work?
Yeah, as I'm reading, I think this is great. It definitely has helped me think of ways to think differently. Yeah. But sometimes I think I'm backwards. I start with the responsible part, and then I somehow get myself into situations where I end up being the prosecutor, the rescuer, or the victim.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how could I do this differently? Because I do start with responsibility.
That's fantastic. If we can stay off the drama triangle, otherwise, I guarantee you, your life will be better. But there are people who are really good. And let me hitchhike on that, Brittany. Here's what happens. Okay. You take the responsible position. These folks that you've been on you choose not to get in the drama triangle anymore. These folks are going to think you're the bad guy, the bad person. Okay. Because you're no longer playing this game with them. Okay. So you run the risk here of being ostracized for a short period of time. I personally think it's worth it in the long run. That this is the healthy position. And I didn't draw this picture earlier, but it's on pages 2 and 3 on the parent adult child thing here. But if you have the parent, the adult, and the child here, and this other person has the parent, the adult, and the child, okay, that the healthy relationship, the healthy stuff takes place there. You're talking about facts, you're talking about goals, you're talking about situations and what have you. You're not criticizing this child, or you're not, and I'm not anti-hugs, by the way. I'm just using that for demonstration purposes only. That what happens is, and then here's just one other model that maybe we can check on what Brittany was talking about there. If this is where we start, this is where we are now, okay, and this is our goal out here. We want this right here to happen. Nothing gets in our way. We reach an exact proportion that we set the goal. But what happens is we get a little off track, a little more. And when our result is out here, the definition of a problem is the difference between the goal and the result. Down here, the problem is little, easy to fix. Out here, the problem is big, hard to fix. A lot of emotion, a lot of drama involved out here. So if someone is having drama out here, sometimes what we need to do is get them back here. Where did we get off track? What can you do different? Where can you pick it up? Where can you re-engage here? Okay? And so what we want to do, but the worst thing we can do is to jump in and rescue them. To give them the solution, give them the answer. Have you tried? But you can say things like, have you tried this? Have you tried that?
So I have a question. So once it gets out there where it's big and ballooned up,
Yes.
how do you fix that? Because sometimes the intention is never for it to where it started from, okay, but then somehow or another that balloon blows up, and once the balloon blows up, how do you pump it?
I may not fully understand the question if I don't, but let me respond to at least part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, that when you're out here, the first thing ties to what Ron said earlier. You can start either place, either the goal or result. Say, what happened? Describe the situation to me. Oh, here's the result. What was the goal? And then you take a look at what's the problem. Now, how can we break that down into bite-sized chunks? What's one action you can take today to start getting back on track here? Okay, so that's if your result, if you wanted A to happen and B happen, you first identified what do we want to have happen? I'm sorry, what do we want to have happen? What actually happened? Okay, what's the size of this problem? How can we break it into bite-sized chunks? Which bite-sized chunk can we work on first? What resources do you have available to you? Okay. Who could help you with that? Have you talked to so-and-so about that? Have you Googled it? They're just, again, you break it down into bite-sized chunks. Now, I think the second half of your comment was maybe a little different. You're talking about if something blows up. I didn't fully understand that.
Well, you were talking about where it starts.
Yeah.
Okay, and then how it blows up into the bigger problem, right?
Uh-huh.
Circle the big circle.
Right.
So my question was just if it's where it starts. I don't even know how to put it.
Well,
describe.
here's what happens. What we want to do, and this is I'm not a big believer in annual performance reviews because I don't think once a year feedback is enough. But if you have someone on your team that's getting off track, you want to catch you down here when it's early, while it's small. Because when it's small, it's easy to fix. So if you see someone getting off track, you don't have to jump on the trauma triangle to let them know that they're getting off track. Okay, other scenarios you want to try? Any questions from the handout? I purposely didn't read the red, blue, and the brown. I just kind of extemporized some of those points. You can read those at your own leisure. I want to get to page.
So I just have one comment, and it might be wrong. I mean, it's just a comment, but you can tell me if it fits in here.
Okay.
And it comes back to what Julie said. So on this balloon thing, I picture a balloon filled with helium.
Okay.
And you're at a park or whatever, and you buy one of those balloons, and there's a string tied to it. And sometimes I find myself having to cut the string and let the balloon fly away. And I'll use a phrase of something like, I'm not sure today I have anything else I can add to this conversation. How about if we come back to this in a day or two, and let's set a time to do that, or something to that effect, and I'll just let that balloon fly.
Excellent.
Is that a good?
Great analogy. I love it. Just say, Brittany doesn't sound like that's something I can help you with. I mean, I really don't have any expertise in that. Or you just have to be direct with what you're thinking and what you're feeling. And when we try and jump in and rescue to feel important, chances are we're going to get in the wrong triangle. We try and first feel, well, why did you do that in the first place? Just picture wagging your finger at somebody. That's going to be a problem. This is more of a personal accountability chart on page 6. In the middle, it says life happens. Okay, that what leads us to the victim role is when we avoid reality. In other words, we don't ask any questions. When we fight reality, we get defensive. That's not how I see it. Or we blame someone else. If everyone else should do their job, I wouldn't be a victim. Or personal excuses. It's not my job, or whatever else. Okay, or we just wait and hope. If it was meant to be, it'll happen. Waiting for divine intervention or whatever. That's going to create victims in ourselves. So what we want to do is move towards personal accountability. So what we want to do in this responsible model is we want to seek reality. What's happening? What are the facts? Who's involved? When did it happen? Why did it happen? Boom, boom, boom. Then we need to acknowledge reality. This is the way it is. And then we need to own it. If it's to be, it's up to me. We need to take personal responsibility for it. Then we need to find a solution. What can I do? And then we need to get on with it. Okay, let's all do it together as a team. So if we enter life here in the center and we go up, with those five scenarios: seek reality, acknowledge reality, own the situation, find the solution, and then get on with it, life is going to be good. If we enter it here in the middle and we blame, make excuses, avoid reality, bad things will happen. Tommy, Matt,
Joel.
who else?
Joel and Doug.
Joel and Doug. Any questions, comments, things you'd add?
I got some good points out of it that I believe I can use as long as I remember them.
Write them down, Tommy. Put it down. Matt, were you starting to say something? You're just adjusting your chair? Oh, that's Joel. I'm sorry. Joel?
Yeah, just adjusting on my chair, but I appreciate everything. Yeah, I took a lot of good nuggets out of this, so
Good.
very helpful.
Doug?
A book I read many years ago that I found very powerful. It's one of the shortest books I've read as well. It was called The QBQ, Question Behind the Question.
I don't hear you, Doug.
What's
Can you hear
that?
the book?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, there's a book I read many years ago that was real powerful along these lines, specifically about personal responsibility, called QBQ, or Question Behind the Question.
Absolutely, you have.
Yeah, similar concepts about personal responsibility, and instead of finding a reason, instead of trying to find all the reasons that A happened or B didn't happen that are outside of yourself, you can identify those, but identify them with the mindset of what can I do to affect them, rather than identifying with the mindset of, oh, well, that's the reason for this, and then continuing to lament over it.
Thank you, Doug. Great book. QTQ, highly recommend it. Quick, easy read. Quick, easy read. Matt, anything you want to add to our discussion here?
I think it just, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it just communicating everything the right way. I mean, it really things can get muddied up pretty quick from things you're talking about, Rex, as far as being a victim and how critical we can be sometimes and how we listen to folks. So, yeah, a lot of good stuff from this.
Good, thank you. Anything else today?
To me, I think about that there's a fine line of when someone brings something to you, you want to be empathetic towards them.
Uh-huh.
You may even want to make a connection with them. You may want to be sensitive to them and, hey, I see you are upset. And to me, that's that fine line of where you get sucked. You can easily get sucked in just from the, because that, whatever that person's saying, you could have been in that same situation. And you could say, yeah, they've done that to me too. You know what I mean? That to me seems to be the point where it's easy to get.
I agree. That's where you have to be mindful of it, but not sit in it with them.
Exactly. Not sit in it with them. It's a good way of saying it. Thank you, Mary. But I mean, here's the thing. I didn't do that paraphrase very well earlier where I talked about we don't have to get in every fight. If someone comes to us and complaining about something, we don't have to acknowledge it. We don't have to recognize it. We don't have to say, yeah, I agree. We don't have to agree, disagree. We just disregard, act like we didn't hear it. Really, that's easier said than done. But we don't have to. We for sure don't want to say, oh, gee, that's too bad. Pity for you. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for the victimhood, and that's not the best way to help them. Let me close with this. It's a poem I heard 50-some years ago. I wrote a book by the same title, Build a Better You. Your task is to build a better world, said God. And I asked how. This world's such a large, vast place and oh so complicated now. And I'm so small and useless. There is nothing I can do, but God in all his wisdom said, you just build a better you. And I think one of the ways that we can build a better you, me, and each of us, is to stay off the drama triangle. Because when we do that, people will model that, and they'll be less likely to get sucked in themselves, and not only will our lives get better, their lives get better too. So thank you for your time and attention. My contact information is on the handout. Feel free if you have questions or want to talk offline about certification, call me anytime. No science to this. Okay, it's more of an art than a science. But just be mindful of what's my responsibility in this situation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great.